Today's movie is a special edition of E.T. And now the special edition is, well, special because Spielberg decided to change a lot of things after the fact and was widely criticized for it. So if there's any differences that I notice between this and the original, I'll let you know as we go through. The movie begins with a race of aliens landing on Earth. Now, when this movie came out, they didn't say what species E.T. is or where exactly he's from, but years later, one of the many retcons Spielberg made to this movie was to confirm the non-canon Star Wars lore that states that E.T. is an Asogian from the planet Brodo-Asogi. And this is all based on a little Easter egg cameo from E.T. in The Phantom Menace. But no one can be in a Star Wars movie without having an extensive backstory.
Look, sir, droids.
Hell, even this guy has a backstory. The authorities show up, led by Keyes, and the aliens take off and they're forced to leave E.T. behind. We then meet 10-year-old Elliott, and now, when this movie came out, Elliott and his family didn't have a last name, but again, for the special edition, Spielberg decided that the last name was Manson, and that Elliott's mom, Mary, was the younger sister of Charles Manson, and they're all just trying to move on after what her brother did. Like, what a weird thing to add. Rounding out the Manson family is Elliott's brother Michael and his younger sister Gertie. That night, Elliott hears a noise outside and finds a horrifying, screaming ballsack creature, and he runs off. Elliott is upset because no one believes him about seeing an alien, and he's also upset because kids at school were teasing him about being the nephew of Charles Manson. Again, it adds zero to the story.
Maybe it was a pervert or deformed kid or something.
Those are the only two things it could have been.
There was nothing like that, penis breath!
Oh! Man, PG movies in the 80s were freaking wild, man. E.T. shows back up that night, and Elliott lures him into the house with razzles. Now, some of you may remember that Spielberg originally used Reese's Pieces, but in 1994, Spielberg ate like 2.5 bags of Reese's Pieces in one sitting, and got so sick that he said he never wanted to see them again. Elliott and E.T. begin to bond, and they immediately have some sort of psychic connection. And the next day, Elliott fakes being sick so he can stay home from school, and he tries to communicate with E.T., but Elliott is kind of rapid fire with the information.
Coke! See, we drank it. These are toys. These are little men. This is Greedo. This is Hammerhead. This is Walrus Man. And this is Snaggletooth. Lando Calrissian. And this is Boba Fett. The fish eat the fish food, and the shark eats the fish. This is Pez. This is a car. This is what we get around in. A peanut. You eat it, but you can't eat this one. Because this is fake. This is money. You see? We put the money in the peanut. You see?
Like, I'm a human, and even I couldn't follow all that. Elliott introduces E.T. to Michael and Gertie, and they all agree to keep E.T. a secret. And they all have to go to school the next day, and they leave E.T. home alone. And while Elliott is getting ready to dissect frogs in science class, E.T. gets drunk, which causes Elliott to get drunk. And now in the original version, E.T. was drinking Schlitz, but years later, Spielberg got really into Cobra Kai and switched it to Coors Banquet in honor of Johnny Lawrence. And also, I don't want this to sound weird, but don't E.T.'s hands look kind of delicious? Like, they look like they've been roasting on a spit over a low flame for about a half hour. Like, just so tender and juicy. Oh man, throw it on a Kaiser roll? I don't know. Is that weird? We find out that when Elliott gets drunk, he turns into a horny activist, and he sets all the frogs free and makes out with his classmate, who's played by a young Erica Eleniak. I never knew that. After school, Gertie and Elliott realize that E.T. can repeat words and phrases, and he knows to say Elliott, be good, and phone. And Elliott tells him that his name is E.T. Now, we all know that E.T. stands for Extra-Terrestrial, but in the special edition, E.T. stands for Elias Townsley. Spielberg got the idea after watching Alf, and he thought it was funny that Alf's real name was Gordon Shumway. And the exact quote from an interview is, "I almost pissed myself laughing watching Alf, and thought to myself, why didn't I think to give E.T. an American name? And he then says the iconic line, E.T. phone home. Elias Townsley.
Phone home.
Oh, that doesn't sound as cool. When we get to Halloween night and they dress E.T. up as a ghost to go trick-or-treating. And Elliott puts E.T. in the basket of his bike and E.T. makes it fly across the moon. One of the most famous scenes in movie history, but what people don't know is that in the theatrical release, Elliott had like 50 of those spokey dokies on his spokes, and the constant rattling really took away from the awesomeness of the scene. Then for the special edition, Spielberg digitally removed the Spooky Dokies and the awful sound they made, and it cost him $80 million out of his own pocket. But honestly, it was worth it. I agree with this change. They reach the top of a hill, and E.T. uses the phone he made to send a signal to Brodo-Asogi. Elliott falls asleep and wakes up the next morning, but E.T. is gone, and Elliott is sick, so Mike goes to look for E.T., and he finds him near death in the creek. And now again, I don't want to sound weird, but he looks like an uncooked cased sausage, right? Like just marinate him in some beer and throw him on the grill. Oh man, so tasty. Like just look at that marbleization. Oh my gosh, my mouth is watering. They take E.T. back to their house and they finally tell their mom about him, and the government shows up and they quarantine the house. And we finally see the face of Keys, and he's only the second adult whose face we've seen so far this movie. They begin running tests on E.T., and Elliott tells Keys that E.T. needs to go home. Okay, he doesn't look all that delicious right now. Kinda looks like an old dog turd. Ooh, but actually, you know what? It kinda looks like powdered sugar. Oh man, I bet he tastes like a key flea. Ooh, or a punchki. Oh man, I bet E.T. has a cherry filling. E.T. begins flatlining and they try to save him. Is that Francis Ford Coppola? And they try to save him, but E.T. dies.
Let's pack him in ice.
For the barbecue later, I like where your head is at. No sense letting him go to waste. Elliott is saying goodbye when E.T.'s internal meat thermometer begins to light up, and E.T. says his family is coming, so they steal E.T. and race to get him to the woods. Now, this is by and large the most controversial change of the special edition, and we all know that these agents were not holding walkie-talkies in the original version, but were in fact holding VHS copies of Herbie Goes Bananas. But again, I always thought it was weird. Like, why did they have VHS copies of a Herbie movie? It never made sense. So, all the people that are pissed about the walkie-talkies, it could have been a VHS copy of Herbie. Like, this is much better. They make it to the woods and meet up with E.T.'s ship, and even though we're in Northern California, E.T.'s species would be right at home in Indiana because he definitely does the Midwestern goodbye.
What did they? Goodbye.
Be good. Thank you. Out.
Oh my gosh, it takes forever. Just grab your shit and go. And so that was E.T. Classic movie with the less than classic special edition changes. And also it has come to my attention that some of your childlike nostalgia for this movie was ruined by my repeated assertions that E.T. looked like he would be delicious to eat. I shouldn't have said that in this video, and I should not have spent the entire week on social media saying things like, slap some barbecue on that alien freak and let's chow down, or I'm about to have a close encounter of the turd kind after I devour this delicious freak down to the bone. I was high on cough medicine at the time, and while it's no excuse, I still want you to know that it's not who I truly am.